Welcome to another episode of Calgary in Depth. This is your host, Dan Kostka, and today I'm joined by Shwetha Yermal. She lives here in Calgary with her family. Welcome, Shwetha.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I like to start off with most folks with just saying when they first came to Calgary. When was it for you?
So we moved to Calgary in 2021 October. So yeah, it's been 3 years, a little
And
more than 3 years, yeah.
right, and remind me, was COVID still an issue then?
Yes, it was. In fact, we had to write to IRCC to kind of push out our landing dates because our landing would have otherwise expired.
Mm.
And they kind of accommodated our request really well.
That's good. So it didn't add too much to the stress or inconvenience?
No, it was actually very seamless, and we were really grateful on how easily it was done for us. Although we had to write a few emails, but that's all that it took. A few email exchanges, yeah.
And where was your family coming from?
So we were moving actually from California. So my husband and we've lived in California for a little over 10 years. And then when we decided to move to Calgary, we had actually already got a PR, but then later on we realized that we were pregnant, and then we had to apply again once our son was born, and then COVID hit, and so we had to push out our travel by a few more months.
And did you know much about Calgary before you came?
Not really. So I actually have a school friend who's settled in Calgary, but I was not a lot in touch with him. However, when we decided to move to Canada, we had three options, either Vancouver, Ontario, or Calgary. And then we chose Calgary for two reasons. The main thing was the medical facility here for my son was one of the best. The Children's Hospital is supposed to be one of the best. And second was also, of course, the cost of living back then, 3 years ago.
I see. And yeah, I was going to ask you about your son later on, but since you did bring it up as being a factor, can you tell us a little bit about what the medical issue was that you had to keep in mind?
Yeah, so my son has multiple issues. He has a G tube. He doesn't eat anything by mouth, and he has global development delay. We had complications right from birth. So he has global development delay and he's autistic, and his most recent diagnosis has been seizure epilepsy. So in California is where he was born. There we were in the NICU for about 45 days, and then we had a neurology team following him. We had his OT, PT, speech therapist, all of them following him. So we wanted a similar group of medical professionals. We needed that team out here as well. And that is when I started doing some research on which is a good place to go to. And he didn't have the autism diagnosis yet when we moved to Calgary, but he was delayed on all fronts. So when I spoke to my friend, actually one of the nurses back in California in the Oakland Children's Hospital, she told me that Calgary had one of the best children's hospital.
Mm.
So she gave me the first, she said that in Ontario. And then my friend here, school friend, he was kind enough to get me in touch with one of the children's hospital nurses through his colleague. And then she was extremely helpful. She called me twice or thrice and told me all about the support that is available here, how the children's hospital caters to such issues.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's how I was convinced actually.
Right. And so when you moved here in 2021, how old was your son at that time?
He had just turned 1 year old.
And you said when he was born, he had been in the ICU for 45 days.
That's right, yeah.
Tell me more about your experience with the Children's Hospital. Most parents only have a little bit of exposure. I have, 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and there have been a couple times where we went to maybe an ER closer to our house, and then they say, well, because of the tests we need to do, you actually have to go up to the Children's Hospital. And so then you sit there for 8 or 10 hours sometimes before you
Yeah.
get seen, unless it's urgent, of course. I mean, if the child has a cold or a cough or something, and you're obviously going to wait a lot longer. For you, how often have you had to go there, and just generally, what has been your experience?
When we came here, we were lucky to kind of get a family doctor almost immediately. She's downtown. And then she referred us to this clinic called Pediatric Associates, which is in Gulf Canada Square. So that's where we got a pediatrician, and she's wonderful. We still go to her, although we moved south. But So she referred us to the Child Development Center and the Children's Hospital. So for the Children's Hospital, we basically go to cater to his home nutrition, which is all his G-tube feeding and swallowing and dietitian and all of that. And all his therapists were mostly in CDC, which was across the Children's Hospital. Now, with the Children's Hospital, we have been there multiple times for multiple things. So we have taken him there for a genetics test, neurology test, and then we did have to visit, for certain emergencies like ear infection, and he was constantly throwing up. And then he had a seizure once, so we had to take him to the hospital. Actually, the EMS services had to come and take him, but every time we have gone there, of course, we also had to wait for a bit. But I think when they have eventually diagnosed him, it has been a thorough diagnosis. So there was this one time because he has, the G tube, and also it's kind of known that autistic kids usually have, development issues. So even because he has GDD2, so the digestive system is not developed well, and there can be issues. And so when we took him once, because he was just throwing up without any reason, because he didn't have a fever or anything, they did a thorough check, and finally they did take a stomach X-ray, around the tube area and all of that. And we found that he was backed up, in terms of his poop. And then we started treating him for that. So I feel that I know the wait times are a little longer, but usually the diagnosis and the medication and everything has been very thorough. And it's not just the children's hospital. So the pediatrician that my son is associated with, she is actually part of the, I think they call it the PCN. I forgot what it stands for.
The primary care network.
Yeah, primary care network, correct.
Hmm.
And because of that, there was a few times when he was sick during the weekend, and we could just easily take him to one of the clinics. When we called 811, they just told us that we could take him to one of the clinics where there was like zero wait time. So they gave us an appointment. We just took him. He was seen, prescribed antibiotics, and we were out. So there are so many advantages to that. And I think neurology is also excellent. Genetics also, we've had a very good experience. And the home nutrition is really great too, because we often go there to get him assessed for his G tube size, and then to see if it's fit properly or if there's some granulation issue. So, you don't always have to take him in person. We can just call them. A phone call is all it takes. And, they give us solutions over the phone. So they always return my calls. I've never had to wait for long. So,
So you feel well taken care of overall,
yes,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good. Well, I want to ask you in a little bit here about some of the activities you and your family like to do in southern Alberta and in the city. But before I do, I'm curious. You said you lived in California for 10 years. So I'm
Mhm.
curious about some of the differences you noticed when you came to Calgary. But before I ask you that, can you tell me where you were before California?
Oh, yeah, I'm actually from India.
Hmm.
Actually, I've only been in California. My husband has been in a few different states in the US, but I have lived in California. So I moved there when I was 30. And before that, I come from the southern part of India. It's a state called Karnataka.
Hmm.
I belong to a city called Mysore in Karnataka, which is closer to Bangalore. I think Bangalore, at least people know Bangalore. It's the one of the IT hubs of India. So yeah, that's where I come from, and I have lived in Karnataka and worked in a different states in the south. Well, once I graduated. So yeah.
Just yesterday, I interviewed someone else who happened to be from India. He's from Mumbai. And he
Oh,
mentioned one of the things that was different when he got to Calgary was this concept of personal space because he was so used to being in crowds all the
oh
time.
yes.
When you first went to California, is that something you really noticed as well? That you had more personal space, even though obviously California has millions and millions of people.
Yes, that was definitely a thing that I noticed. And in India, you always find people,
Mm.
especially if you're in the metros, in the bigger cities. There are people all the time. You'll have, even in residential areas, you have kids playing on the street, you have vehicles moving. So there are people all the time. That is definitely one of the stark differences that I noticed.
And what else when you first went to California? What was different
So
about it?
cleanliness. I mean, I know about the difference. I knew about it already, but then I kind of witnessed it firsthand. India, not that every part is unclean. In fact, I'd be surprised that some of the smaller villages are so much more cleaner than the cities, but the cities is usually where I've lived most of my life. Back in India, they are not really clean. Pollution is another, big factor.
And where in California were you living?
I was living in the Bay Area. So I was working in San Francisco, but I was living 40 miles away from San Francisco. I lived in three different places, smaller suburbs.
San Francisco, I mean, I've never been there, but I'm aware of that they have their own issues in terms of drug use and homelessness
Oh,
and
yes.
so on. It's quite a big challenge, a big issue that they're facing.
Yeah.
But by comparison, it was still relatively clean and so on compared to the big cities that you'd been in before.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
I must say it was. There were a few streets where you would find that it was a little unclean and you can see the streets littered, but compared to back in India, yeah, it's very less
Hmm.
for such big a city. Yeah.
And then when you came to Calgary, what were some of the differences you noticed from what you were used to in California?
One of the main things that we felt was the way the communities are distributed. So you have a lot of space, right, between communities. You have a lot of greenery, I feel. I mean, if you talk about, so in California, it's a little different in the sense that if you take, like, for instance, Pleasanton was one of the suburb cities that I have lived in, and then Dublin. So the city itself is just that, right? But if you take Calgary, for instance, you have four quadrants, but it's still like Calgary, right? It's the entire Calgary, even if you travel north south.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was something different. So, when we were looking for homes, I remember initially we were living in North, rather close to downtown. We were in Kensington. And when we decided to look for homes down south, initially, the first few times we came down, we were like, wow, south seems to be like 30 minutes away. And then you see a lot of empty spaces, right? I mean, either there's rivers or there's like some sort of vegetation or just empty lands in between. So yeah, that was something. So we felt that it was distributed sparsely, kind of. So that
Mhm.
was interesting, honestly. Otherwise, a lot of things are pretty much the same, Dan, honestly.
Do you miss
I
the ocean and the beaches
Oh
sometimes?
yeah, that is something we definitely miss because similar to how we can drive to the Rockies in about less than 2 hours, we can get to the ocean there as well, even, in about 45 minutes to an hour. That is something we miss.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I bet. I always love it. Whenever I'm at the ocean and you see the ships and the way the ships could just go anywhere around the world, it's just really nice. So tell me, please, about some of the activities you and your family like to do in Calgary and in the area.
Yeah, we love to visit places. So we have been to quite a few places. There's still a lot more to go on our list. But our son is still small and with all his different needs, we haven't been able to take up a lot of activities, but we do go to places like, the indoor play areas. We go to the parks a lot in summer. We take him to swim lessons. And I'm trying to enroll him to a gymnastics class now. Yeah, we also want to start hiking now that he's started walking. And then we love our community lake too. We live in Auburn Bay, so there's a beautiful lake.
Yes,
We,
yes.
yeah, so we spend a lot of time during our summers there because our son loves to play in the water. And then
Mm.
we love to drive down to Banff, Canmore, some of our favorite places. We've been to Jasper. We took a road trip last year to BC. And we also love to go to all these farmers markets.
Mm.
That's one of the fun things that my husband and I like to do.
Now
Yeah,
you're talking about the ones inside the city or the ones in the other communities?
all of them. I mean, we like to visit the ones inside the city, and we've been to some of the farms on the slightly outskirts of the city down south. We like to go to the farmers markets or go to farms. It's fun.
For sure. What's your favorite farmers market inside the city here?
Actually, I like the one that is there near the Saddle Dome. There is a farmers market, right? That one I like. And then I don't know the location of this one. There is a Crossroads farmers market
Yes.
that is really nice.
Where's,
Saskatoon
yeah.
Farm is one of our favorites too.
The
Just,
Saskatoon one, did you say?
yeah, we like going there.
That's just south of the city, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. It's just about 20 minutes from where we live.
And the Crossroads Farmers Market, yeah, it's been around for a long time and it's just
Yeah.
not far from Blackfoot and Deerfoot, kind of in the
Correct.
southeast there, just a little bit east of the Saddle Dome area. And yeah,
Yeah.
they have a nice variety of things. When you go to a shopping mall, it's kind of predictable what's in all the stores. If you go to a farmer's market, you really don't know what you're going to find. There's things you just don't find anywhere else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the Christmas markets that, they put up. So I usually go to the one in Auburn Bay that they put up here. I wanted to go to the Spruce Meadows one this year, but I missed it.
Hmm.
But I like to, and then Mahogany, which is another community closer, they also have a market. It's a lot of fun.
You ever think about how Calgary could be even better? Do you and your husband ever discuss that? Like, oh, I wish Calgary had more of this or more of that or would deal with this issue.
I think it's a little unfair, but it is what it is because even we are immigrants or migrants to Calgary, right? But when I moved here in 2022, the number of people moving, the kids having special needs or neurodivergent kids was still a contained number. But now there are more people moving here, and because of that, we are seeing that there are a lot of it's not just that, it's also more of there's a lot of funds being cut for the special need kids, all the services from the government. So I think now there is a wait time for everything that is increasing. And I think that even housing, the way I hear it from some of, the people I know who've moved, it's also getting a little more expensive. So I think that probably they should plan a little more before allowing more people to come in, right? The other thing that actually my physiotherapist and I were discussing just last week was also on the number of facilities. At least I don't know about the other quadrants, but down south, we have YMCA, which is one of the biggest, I think, that is there in the south. However, you can be members, but trying to get into, let's say, swimming classes or some other classes, there's a huge wait list always. And so people prefer to drive to Okotoks or some other place to enroll themselves in swim lessons, for instance. So I think some of the facilities, maybe they can probably build one or two more, and that would help the people, especially the new people who've come to Calgary. It might definitely help.
Yeah, I think obviously there's wonderful benefits to having lots of new Calgarians, but at the same time, there's this strain on the healthcare system, on the strain on demand for all of these facilities. And like you
Right.
said, swimming lessons stuff. Because often if you're bringing in, folks with families and maybe they're coming from countries where a lot of these resources aren't available, so they really appreciate it. They really value, wow, look at this amazing recreation center with these beautiful swimming pools and lessons and look at these beautiful parks that you can drive to an hour and a half away, like Lake Louise and Banff and so on. But we've
Right.
seen how it's really hard to find parking spots in so many places. And like you said, there's waiting lists for swimming lessons. And so it's wonderful that people are using all the wonderful things we have. But at the same time, there isn't enough to go around, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. There's definitely a strain on the system in terms of just more demand than supply in so many categories, it seems. We
Yeah,
need to catch up.
we need to.
Yeah. I know the province recently announced they're going to build a bunch more schools, so that's good.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Probably could use some more recreation centers.
Yes.
In the last 3 years or so that you've been here, have you had people from out of town visit, like friends and family from back home?
We had my husband's parents come and visit us.
Hmm.
So they were here with us for a little over 6 months.
Oh, wow. So plenty of time to do things with them. What do you think were some of the favorite things that you did with them?
Oh, so we actually went to Jasper the first time with them. So that was last year. So we were waiting. We always wanted to go to Jasper. So we went with them when they came and oh wow, Jasper is beautiful. When I say this, it's sad, but fortunately we were there just before the big fire.
Mhm. In
And
July
we
of
were
last year, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and we were extremely heartbroken, when we heard about the fire because we saw a lot of wildlife, on our way to Jasper and on our way back home. And so it was not just the people and, the historical monuments that were impacted that made me feel bad, but my heart went out to all the animals as well that, would have suffered because of the fire.
Of course. What were some of
But
the animals you saw on that trip?
we saw bears, we saw elks, mountain goats. Did we see coyotes there or was it somewhere else? But yeah, we saw a lot of not just elks, but deer as well. Yeah. It was wonderful to see the bear. Actually, I was waiting to see some bears, and just when I was about to give up on our way back home, we saw it on on our way back home. So
Must have been very exciting for your husband's parents too, because not the
yes.
kinds of animals they typically see back. I assume they're from India.
Yes, especially elks
Mm.
are, not very common. It's there in the northern part of India, but it's not very common across India. So, yeah. And then we also took the road trip to BC. So, we saw a few places. We visited some places in Vancouver. We did some pit stops in Golden. So, that was fun. We also when we went to Banff, we took them on the gondola. So, they loved that experience as well. And the view from the top, it was wonderful. And then I think the short hike to Peyto Lake was also fun because I remember my father-in-law found it a little difficult climbing up, but once he got to the top, he really felt it was worth it, after seeing the turquoise blue of the lake and all of that.
Now, I know that India doesn't allow dual citizenship because the man I
Yep.
interviewed yesterday told me that. So I learned that yesterday. Are you thinking of getting Canadian citizenship if you haven't already?
We are planning on getting the Canadian citizenship. So we are a little bummed that we cannot have both the citizenship.
Mm.
But yeah, we will apply for the overseas citizenship of India, which is what we can do. So we'll definitely apply for that and the citizenship as well in Canada.
And that overseas citizenship that you'll apply for allows you to do extended visits back to India, right?
Correct, correct. So
Yeah.
it's the same like having your PR.
Yeah.
You
Your
just
permanent
can't
residency.
vote
Yeah.
and yeah, it's similar to your permanent residency, yeah.
So are you feeling fairly settled in, considering you've only been here in Calgary 3
Oh,
years or
yes.
so?
Oh, yes. We are settled well. We are in a great community. We have wonderful neighbors. And through my neighbors, I have gotten to know a lot of other women in the community. We've also made more friends. I've also been part of Toastmasters, right? I met a lot of wonderful people there. So, yes, we are pretty settled now. I think the resources in Calgary is amazing, especially for the newcomers. And even with parents who have, neurodivergent kids, there are a lot of resources out there. Although there are some wait times, but alternate options are plenty. There are a lot of Facebook groups. There are lots of online sessions that are held. So I think from that point of view, there's a lot of support. And we were fortunate to have wonderful neighbors. Yeah, they help us a lot too. We, in fact, have a neighbors Facebook group. So
Mhm.
we're just asking for things or asking for help or sharing things. So it's wonderful.
Well, it sounds like you really tapped into all the resources and networks that were available to help you settle in.
Yeah.
Sounds like you did all the right things. Is there anything you could have done more of that would have made the transition even easier, or do you think it was pretty much as good as it could have been?
I think it was good done because one factor that really helped us was that we could just move with the same jobs that we
Mm.
had. My husband and I both are in IT. So we were working with an Indian MNC. That's how we traveled to the States. And we continued working with that. And so we could easily transition to Calgary and not have to switch jobs. We could still continue working. So I think that is something where a lot of people who move struggle with, right, to find work or start off with work. That definitely helped us a lot. And probably because we were already living in the States, that kind of also helped us with the transition.
Well, Shweta, I think you've offered a wealth of information for folks who are either fairly new to the community or who are considering a move to Calgary. And I just want to thank you for sharing your experiences and sharing this knowledge that hopefully will help others.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you for having me and thank you for doing this.
Take care.
You too. Thank you.